here in Hawthorne to do a go-no-go poll, make sure that the vehicle still looks healthy, make sure that everyone on board the space station and of course on board Dragon.
SpaceX Dragon, we completed with the translation maneuvers. We're going to pick up with the closure maneuver.
We copy. We're following along with you.
All right, sounds like they're done with their translations. They're going to start moving it back.
We copy. We're following along with you.
To the docking axis. Put us right back on the center line. With their translations. They're going to start moving it back.
We copy. We're following along with you.
To the docking axis. Put us right back on the center line. With their translations. They're going to start moving it back.
We copy. Dragon SpaceX, you have used 2/3 of your prop test budget.
I can copy 2/3 of the budget. SpaceX Dragon. That completes the closure maneuver.
We copy. Closure maneuver complete.
That will move on to 4.041, section 4.
We copy and concur.
All right, so our manual flight test has been completed. We're standing by for them to now resume approach 1. So to move in from that waypoint 1, we're already inside of the keep out sphere at this point. Dragon's holding just 176 meters from the space station, and pretty soon they're going to be approaching.
Dragon. That completes the manual piloting demonstration. I only had to twist Doug's arm for 2 or 3 minutes to get him to allow me to deactivate the piloting controls.
We copy. Excellent. Thank you. And with that, we ask that you, from the display used for manual piloting, please go to audio settings and adjust a gain setting for seat 1 or 4. And in addition, we would appreciate any handling qualities evaluation of the proximity piloting possible.
We've completed the gain setting adjustment for seat 1, and I'll turn it over to Doug for the handling qualities quick look. SpaceX Dragon on the big loop for the handling qualities. It flew just about like the sim, so my congratulations to the folks in Hawthorne. It flew really well, very crisp. It was a little sloppier and wide, just like we saw in the sim, but all the other axes, as well as closure and opening, were all just as per.
Excellent to hear. Thank you.
That kind of gives you an indication of sort of how the design process works. You know, Bob and Doug have had lots of opportunities to test this out and sim it and give their feedback. And pretty cool to hear that their sim experience was very similar to what they saw actually on orbit. Just, I think you said 170 meters away from station right now?
Yeah, we're just 176, and I imagine as a spacecraft designer, that's exactly what you want to hear. Is the way that I trained you in it here on the ground is exactly how it performed once you're there for the real thing. So the second manual piloting test in the books, Bob and Doug putting Dragon through its paces. Now we're time to put it all to where we get to our endpoint. We're ready to get Dragon docked to the International Space Station.
Dragon SpaceX on Big Loop. The ground will be resuming approach shortly. We do plan to hold briefly at waypoint 2, so reminder that crew visors down are not required until the ground is preparing to command the final approach.
Thanks, Dragon. We copy. We'll hold at waypoint 2 for a pause, and then we'll get our visors then once you command.
We copy.
And station, it's Houston on the Big Loop. As you've heard, Endeavour is resuming its approach to waypoint 2. Chris, you can monitor now for step 2. That's step 2 and 1.104 Crew Dragon approach and retreat monitor.
Copy. Step 2 will work.
Pretty cool view of the International Space Station from Dragon. This would actually be overlaid, or rather their controls would be overlaid on the displays on top of this view. And we got to see some pretty cool views from behind. Actually, there's a view right there. You can see the station on their displays. Visors up, Doug in the left seat, Bob in the right seat.
Yeah, so at this moment, Dragon is going to be resuming the approach. As we heard them informing the crew They're going to have that one final hold when they're just 20 meters away. That's going to be at waypoint 2. We're expecting it to be a brief hold while the teams all tag up and do a final go to move in for docking. Getting a great look at the space station itself. The docking port is right in the center of our screen. You can see another spacecraft currently docked to the space station, the Japanese HTV spacecraft currently docked to the Earth-facing port. One of those common berthing mechanisms also on Node 2. So Dragon will be the second vehicle to be docked to the Harmony module once it makes its final approach. And it's moving in right now. Again, just to give you an idea of how quickly they're moving, they're going at about 0.3 of a meter per second right now. And so if you're having any trouble with that docking simulator online, remember to just slow things down a little bit and your chances will go up exponentially. We just passed 140 meters away. We'll get our live video comm back with the space station momentarily. As soon as we do, we'll bring you back up there. But for now, Bob and Doug continuing to fly in. They're just 135 meters away.
Station on the big loop in step 2. Review of steps 3 and 4 is complete. Crew on the International Space Station is ready for docking.
Station Houston on the big loop. We copied the review of 3 and 4 complete. International Space Station ready. Thank you.
Expedition 63 Commander Chris Cassidy giving the report. Station is ready for docking.
Yeah, and you can see the trajectory of the spacecraft. There are small corrections that are happening. So as we get closer and closer to station, we're trying to stay within those 2 corridors, which are shown coming out of the docking port that we're going towards. That little dot, I think, was the 20-meter hold point, so that's where we expect there to be the spacecraft holding right in front of the International Docking Adapter. There'll be a go, no-go poll. The ground teams have worked hard over the past probably years to come up with a set of what we call flight rules. So those are technical constraints, items that we look for, that if any of those criteria were violated, then we have a rule that we've predetermined, gives us guidance to say whether we could approach or not. So far, our vehicle has been very healthy, but technical ground teams will all do their due diligence to make sure that it's still safe to approach.
Right, and at this moment, that approach is continuing, still moving in at about 0.3 of a meter per second. Dragon's coming up on just 100 meters away from the space station.
So the very top there is the nose cone on the spacecraft, where we've got a cool view. Left side of your screen is the International Space Station. Right side of your screen is Dragon.
We're inside 100 meters, continuing to close. Again, we're going to have a short hold at 20 meters. Teams will just do a final check, and then they'll give Dragon the go. We're expecting it to be pretty brief. We should get to that hold point in just about 4 minutes, moving at our current pace.
I think you can see a meatball and American flag on that on the spacecraft. The NASA logo, of course, referred to as the meatball. I think there was some spirited discussion about the meatball versus the worm during ascent. And you can see those logos. That structure on the fairing structure is actually what the Super Dracos are housed in. Of course, all of those are deactivated now, only used for launch escape during the ascent portion. Nose cone right at the top of the vehicle, and you can see sort of the sealing surface. Those four circular slots right underneath the nose cone within that red ring are the forward bulkhead Dracos. That's what we were using while we were conducting all those burns, the 5 burns to get to this point. Right now, we don't have a reason to use those. We'll only be making small attitude corrections with the service section Dracos. And you can see the service section actually pretty clearly here too. There's a black portion and a white portion sort of separated by a fin. The black portion is solar panels, solar cells that'll charge Dragon's batteries, and the bottom side are the white portion is actually a thermal radiator that's used to keep the spacecraft nice and cool. Of course, the avionics and the cabin, making sure that Bob and Doug are comfortable inside.
It looks like we're getting a shadow cast. We are just 60 meters away, continuing to close in, just about 40 meters to go until we're at that hold point. Should get there in just over 2 minutes. Meanwhile, teams in Hawthorne and in Houston doing their internal go, no go for docking. They're going to get all the teams polled. Once everyone's go, we'll be able to give Dragon the final go ahead for the vehicle to autonomously fly in and dock with the International Space Station. Should be coming up on waypoint 2 arrival in just about 1 minute, 45 seconds. At this point, it'll be 20 meters away from that docking port. The International Docking Adapter number 2 attached to pressurized mating adapter number 2 at the very forward end of the Harmony module.
Right there on the, right around the center, you can see the forward hatch. It's got a window in it. You can see a couple of handles, and there's some features that look sort of bronze-ish. Those are the pedals that we were talking about earlier as part of the soft capture system. So pretty wild, too, to see. We're so close that we're getting shadows from the station on Dragon. Wow.
And we're getting these views of Dragon's approach from 2 cameras that are right next to that docking adapter. And the movement's a little jarring at times. These cameras are being commanded by a person at the Cronus console in Mission Control Houston, and they send some very basic function commands to the camera, which it then executes automatically. And so they're continuing to follow Dragon in, so we do thank them for their diligence to give us these views of this historic moment as we are just less than 30 meters away from docking.
Right above the NASA meatball logo, you can see 3 of the service section Draco thrusters.
That's right, 12 in all. So the 4 of those clusters spread around the vehicle, used for a lot of the attitude control and any small translational maneuvers like we just watched Bob and Doug execute with their second manual flight test.
Yeah, and actually oriented in a way, too, where if you were to lose some of those thrusters, you still have redundancy and control in those axes. That's part of the reason why they're sort of at the angles that they are.
All right, so we should be getting to waypoint 2 right now. So it looks like we do have that hold.
Dragon SpaceX on Big Loop. The ground is go for approach 2. We will be enabling the resume shortly. As a reminder, ensure your visors are closed prior to Dragon's departure from the waypoint. And once Dragon is inside the crew hands-off point, retreat and breakout are not permitted. And for your awareness, we have sunset in a little less than 8.5 minutes.
Copies all on the Big Loop. Go for docking.
So Doug on the spacecraft confirming their go for docking. They're going to put down their visors. Got some instructions there about the crew hands-off point that we had talked about earlier. That's a point where we don't want the crew issuing any commands to the vehicle. It's about just about 2 meters away from the docking adapter. I believe the number is about 1.7 meters.
Station Houston on the Big Loop. Houston and station are now go for docking. Chris, you can monitor per steps 3 and 4. 3 and 4 in 1.104 Crew Dragon approach and retreat monitoring.
Copy steps 3 and 4.
Next Dragon on the Big Loop. Our visors are down.
Copy, visors down.
the crew confirming their visors down, we should see the final approach resume.
Station Dragon on the Big Loop. We are inbound from approach 2.
Copy inbound.
Station copy.
And we're going to be racing that sunset. The approach has resumed. Dragon closing in. We're inside 20 meters. And yeah, that crew hands-off point should come up in about 3 minutes or so. Right before we get that final docking, it comes about 20 seconds prior, or just about 2 meters away from the station still. And that's just the crew not issuing any abort commands. At that point, it would be too late. And so any aborts would be executed automatically by Dragon itself. So we're closing in at less than 1/10 of a meter per second at this point.
You can see the service section Draco is just doing all these very small, minor attitude corrections. Really, the autonomous docking system at work, making sure that the vestibule and the soft capture system is lined up with IDA2. It's the international docking adapter.